television runs on charm, on the illusion that every conversation flows, every laugh lands, and every guest arrives ready to play along. Behind the polished glow of the Graham Norton Show, however, is a slightly more complicated reality. Not every guest fits the rhythm. Some resist it, some disrupt it, and others unintentionally test the finely tuned balance that Norton navigates so well. Over hundreds of episodes, he has met chaos with grace, but a few encounters have lingered. These are the guests about whom he would later hint, with which he would gently joke or avoid discussing too deeply. Here are the 7 guests who challenge Graham Norton the most. Number 1. Mark Wahlberg. His presence quickly became a masterclass in controlled chaos. Arriving in an impulsive and unpredictable mood, he talked over stories, leaned across other guests, and pushed Norton into a rare defensive posture. The result was humorous, tense, and wildly unbalanced, and showed just how fragile the show's rhythm becomes when one guest tilts the entire room. From the moment Wahlberg settled into his seat, his energy was running ahead of the conversation. His interruptions were playful but disruptive, forcing Norton to repeatedly guide the discussion back into shape. Smooth transitions are one of Norton's strong suits. He abruptly tightened his pacing, redirecting each moment that Wahlberg was hijacking unintentionally. The other guests sensed the shift, exchanging quick, amused glances as the energy on the sofa became increasingly unpredictable. Despite the instability, Norton never let the episode go off the rails. He subtly redistributed attention with humor and softened Wahlberg's interruptions, quietly rebalancing the group dynamic. His composure kept the chaos entertaining instead of uncomfortable. Reflecting later on challenging interviews in general, Norton said hosting sometimes feels like guiding a wave instead of leading a conversation. It was the perfect description for that night. Wahlberg meant no harm, but his appearance exposed just how much invisible skill it takes to keep the show's iconic red sofa steady. Number 2. Madonna. She came with the whisper of legend and the watchful wariness of one set on never losing control. Every question was a negotiation, every joke a boundary test. Norton was amiably game, but the work in his affability wasn't hard to discern. From her very first response, Madonna's answers were short, considered, and emotionally standoffish. He varied his tone, easing into the tempo, using lighter angles, but each was duly rewarded with a pause and another precise, considered reply. The exchange was never unpleasant, just settling into a cordial remove that neither quite breached. In the past, Norton has almost hinted at guests such as Madonna, who arrive with a shield which you notice before they have even spoken, a reminder of how fame hardens up even the most bold performers. Other guests were uncertain how playful they could be, tiptoeing around the careful balance of the room. But every so often, Norton would find the tiniest opening. Moments when Madonna loosened up, responded with a smile, or allowed a brief spark of spontaneity to surface. In those moments, viewers caught glimpses of the raw, fearless performer she once was, the one unafraid to provoke or surprise. Speaking more broadly about tough interviews, Norton once said that some conversations feel like trying to warm a room with a single candle. Madonna's appearance fit that description perfectly. She wasn't combative. She simply stayed in a world entirely her own, and Norton had to work meticulously to meet her there. Number 3. Miriam Margolyes. Electricity is what Miriam Margolyes brings to every interview, and sometimes that electricity shocks the entire room. During one especially notorious appearance, her wild storytelling veered so far off course that guests were left stunned, and Norton found himself theatrically speechless. He reveres her enormously, yet even deep affection cannot prevent the periodic on-air explosion that throws off the show's careful rhythm and sends the sofa spinning. She came that night with her trademark unpredictability, cheerful, but armed with stories capable of derailing any conversation. Within minutes, she launched into an outrageous anecdote that sent guests caught somewhere between laughter and disbelief. Norton attempted a gentle redirect, but Margolyes pushed forward with delighted abandon, fully committed to the chaos she was creating. Norton once described her presence thus: "She has a directness that reaches the room before she does, a line that captures both her charm and her shock factor." Her honesty is beloved, though it can sweep the show into a faster and wilder direction than anyone expects. As her story intensified, Norton's exaggerated reactions became part of the comedy. Wide eyes, nervous laughter, and an eventual gesture of surrender. With each unexpected detail she delivered, the tension melted into laughter as guests realized they were witnessing a moment no one could control. Reflecting on unpredictable interviews, Norton once said some guests feel like holding a sparkler you cannot put down. The description suits her perfectly. Margolyes is not disruptive on purpose. She is simply fearless, and that fearlessness turns every appearance into an unforgettable burst of chaos. Number 4. Dominic West. There was an undercurrent of tension in Dominic West's time on the sofa, subtle at first, but unmistakable once it surfaced. When Norton touched on past cast dynamics, West shut down the conversation with an edge that shifted the atmosphere in an instant. Smoothly, Norton recovered, but the abruptness left a chill in the room, hanging there. West was courteous but guarded upon arrival, treading questions with a cautious tone that suggested there were areas on which he would not entertain. Where Norton lightly referred to a moment from West's work on The Wire, perhaps hoping for a fun anecdote, the actor responded with a clipped dismissal that halted the momentum and made the room tighten just a little. Speaking on such a situation later, Norton said some guests arrive with lines you don't know are there until you cross them. The other guests immediately sensed the shift and countered with small laughs and nods of politeness. To right the room, Norton pivoted with perfect timing, moving to safer subjects and allowing West space to relax without touching sensitive ground again. The show gradually regained its balance, though it never entirely shook off that early tension. Norton once mentioned that sometimes the job of hosting involves dealing with boundaries nobody warns you about. And that's the exact thought that applies here. West wasn't hostile. He was merely defensive. Yet that defensiveness cued a room in ways he didn't intend. Number 5. Harvey Weinstein. Years before his public downfall, Harvey Weinstein's appearance on the show already radiated discomfort. Domineering, dismissive, and visibly uninterested in sharing space with others. Norton handled the interview with professionalism, but the imbalance was unmistakable. It became one of those rare episodes that only makes perfect sense in hindsight, once the fuller story of Weinstein's behavior came to light. From the second he sat down, his presence weighed heavily on the room. He interrupted freely, steered conversations back toward himself, and answered with a cold, transactional tone that siphoned the warmth off the sofa. The jarring contrast his demeanor provided to the show's usual easy chemistry was impossible to ignore. Years later, Norton spoke generally about interviews in which the energy tells you everything the words don't, a careful acknowledgement that some guests disrupt the room simply from being in it. Watching it now, that energy is unmistakable. Tight laughs, hesitant smiles, and a palpable effort from everyone to keep things civil. Norton responded with steady composure. He redirected attention to the other guests, shortened Weinstein's opportunities to dominate, and used humor as a protective shield to keep the segment from falling apart. His restraint kept the moment from turning openly sour, even as discomfort hummed beneath every exchange. Speaking broadly, Norton once said some interviews are like guiding the room away from the wrong center. That describes this moment exactly. What felt uneasy at the time reads plainly today. Tension waiting to be understood. Number 6. Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro's quiet, reserved presence presented a challenge quite unlike any other. Polite but distant, he provided almost no openings, which left Norton to try to shape conversation from near silence. Viewers watched a master host generate energy from fragments. De Niro's reluctance was not in the least unfriendly, but it turned the interview into a delicate exercise in patience and precision. Right from the start, his answers came in short, almost whispered lines. His quietness made Norton stretch every thread of dialogue, constructing moments from subtle expressions rather than obvious cues. Where other guests bring spontaneous spark, De Niro brought stillness, a quality that works beautifully on film but becomes difficult in the rapid rhythm of a live talk show. It was one of the rare times Norton later admitted he might not invite someone back. Reflecting more broadly on interviews like this, Norton says some guests converse through expression rather than words, leaving the host to find the rhythm alone. That dynamic defined the whole segment. Norton leaned in, added extra warmth, and used gentle humor to fill the spaces De Niro left untouched. Other guests tried quietly to nudge the conversation along with light jokes, but De Niro remained unflappable, revealing little beyond a polite smile. Norton instinctively adjusted, slowing the pace, allowing silence to settle without panic, and guiding the room back into comfort with skill that seemed largely effortless. He once said some conversations feel like sculpting air until it becomes something, a description that perfectly applies here. De Niro was not awkward, merely minimal. And minimalism on that sofa becomes a showcase of Norton's hosting brilliance. Number 7. Billie Eilish. The early appearance of Billie Eilish was marked by visible nerves and brief replies, with the weight of sudden fame hanging over every moment. Immediately, Norton softened his tone, adjusted his pacing, and carried the conversation with extra care. This was not a contentious interview, yet the fragility in the exchange left its mark on how even kindness may struggle to steady an anxious guest. Eilish arrived thoughtful but overwhelmed, with answers feeling more like quiet notes than responses. Immediately, Norton recognized the tension and adjusted his approach, giving her more time, not rushing transitions, and asking questions that would take the pressure off instead of heaping on more. Still, at every pause, the strain of new fame surfaced. Thinking of moments like this, Norton has said that sometimes you have to interview someone where they are, rather than where your show usually lives. That was the idea framing the whole exchange. The other guests contributed to the gentleness. Light humor, soft prompting, no attempts to nudge Eilish into leading conversations when she clearly wasn't ready. Slowly, she loosened, smiling more, leaning forward, even making small jokes. Yet the vulnerability never quite went away, a reminder that sudden global attention can leave even the brightest talents feeling unsteady. Speaking more broadly, Norton said that some interviews make early fame look fragile close up. That resonates through this appearance. Eilish wasn't diva-esque, just young and overwhelmed and very human. Norton treated that humanity with exceptional care. In the end, these moments from Graham Norton's red sofa remind us that conversation is never just conversation. It is chemistry, timing, vulnerability, and the invisible currents between people who may have met only minutes before the cameras roll. Some guests arrive open and overflowing with stories. Others arrive guarded, unpredictable, or carrying storms no one else can see. Norton's brilliance lies in navigating all of it, turning tension into humor, discomfort into warmth, and silence into something almost cinematic. These 7 encounters go beyond awkward interviews. They reveal how delicate connection can be, even in a room built for laughter, and how much humanity sits beneath fame's polished surface.